Hi, Founders fans. Jason here. Welcome back to Founder of the Day. And I just wrote an article about the burning of New York City, and I thought we should talk about it while it's fresh on my mind. Um, it's often overlooked that right after the Declaration of Independence is signed, the British show up to New York, pull into New York Harbor. We have the famous Battle of Long Island. And just a month later, they occupy New York City. And they would occupy New York City for 8 years of the war. It was under foreign occupation. Uh, Granted, there were a number of loyalists who thought it was under regular occupation, but from our American perspective nowadays, it was foreign. Um, and 5 days after the British show up, a quarter of New York City burns to the ground. This is major. Now, New York City, I believe, was only the third largest city after Philadelphia and Boston, I believe. Um, but still, one of the biggest cities in the country. And I mean, the idea. Granted, today New York City is much bigger. Not only taller buildings, but it takes up the whole island of Manhattan. And at the time, most of the city was down at the southern tip. But still, almost 1,000 buildings burned, and that is a huge catastrophe for any city. What's really interesting is it only burned for one night, September 20th into the 21st, 1776. This could have been much worse. Apparently, there was a change of winds which helped, but at the time, so when the Continental Army had first gone to Manhattan earlier that year, around February of 1776, most of the Loyalists fled because they were being persecuted by the Patriots. Um, and then when the British showed up, most of the Patriots fled because they were prepared to be persecuted by the British. So the island was relatively desolate compared to what it usually was. Um, Now, to this day, we don't really know how the fire started. It sounds like it's unlikely that the British. Okay, I should say first, it's pretty much agreed on that several fires were started around the city. So, it's most historians agree that it was done on purpose. Um, but it's unlikely that the British started the fire because they had just gotten there and they wouldn't want to piss off the people who were living there. And on top of that, one of the reasons we fought the revolution was British quartering soldiers in everyday people's homes. And when General Howe showed up, he was fully prepared to quarter his soldiers in people's homes. So to have these homes now burnt, that wasn't helpful for him. Um, on the other side, it's highly unlikely that we know for a fact that the Continental Congress ordered George Washington not to burn the city because it was discussed. And Washington always defaulted to Congress. We have no reason to believe he didn't default to Congress, although would later write that the British were doing for the Continental Army, quote, what we could not do for ourselves. So he liked the idea that it happened, but it's almost certain he had nothing to do with it. Although argument can be made that he would have had some early spies doing it for him covertly, but one of the Nathaniel Hale, the first famous spy, I have only regret. My only regret is I could give but one life for my country. Fame. He would be hung in the aftermath of this event. So probably they hadn't. Washington wasn't very good at spying quite yet. So probably we would have found out if that was the case. It seems like the best bet as to who actually started it were a bunch of patriots who were upset that they had to evacuate, and they probably conspired, 5 or 6 of them among themselves, and started the fires on their way out of town. Either way, fortunately, in the aftermath, it turns out Howe rounded up like 200 or so suspects, but no one was actually convicted. They were all let go. Um, Additionally, there were, of course, rumors of people being, patriots being thrown into the blaze and just being killed on sight, but those seem to be stories. It honestly seems like a few people started a fire on their way out, and unfortunately, it blew up. Because we need to keep in mind there were no hoses at this point. There were just buckets that you would pass to each other and throw on the fire. They did use an interesting tactic I read about where they would knock down houses uh, that were in the line of the fire to slow it down. And fortunately, like, as I said earlier, there was a change of wind and it seems to have gone out, because uh, there were, as I said before, there were just not a lot of people around to fight it. The Patriots had left, the Loyalists had left, and on top of that, Howe thought it might have been a trick by the Patriots to distract his soldiers while so they could attack, and therefore General Howe kept his soldiers on guard as opposed to letting them go fight the blaze. So again, the fact that it only lasted for less than 24 hours is amazing. Amazing for this point in time. Everything was wood. That's it. The basements would have been made of cobblestone or some type of rock. I shouldn't say cobblestone. I'm not an archaeology, architectural expert by any means. But yeah, they were really fortunate that it happened. So, just something to reflect on today. To think of this tragedy that burned through New York City, right? Pretty much close to the beginning of the war. And because of everything else going on nationwide, it's forgotten, but very important because it would take decades to build. There was another fire in 1835 that I believe was bigger, more destructive, but I don't know a lot about it. I just know of it. But as far as the 18th century goes, I'm under the impression that this was the largest fire in the city. One of the largest fires in any cities, as far as I understand. So I'll end it there. I do want to say I did a live stream on Saturday, and it was a lot of fun. Only a few people showed up, which I expected. But if you are free this Saturday at 5 o'clock, I'm going to do another one. Unless, of course, a wave of people leave me comments saying, hey, do it this day instead so that I can come. Because I am very grateful to the few people who showed up last time. But I would love to have more people come interact. You know, we had a nice conversation. I haven't cleaned up my set yet. But I went through some of the books I recommend, which that is still available. It's long. The first 5 minutes, I didn't realize I had started the camera, so it's me talking to myself instead setting things up. So if you're interested in me looking like a fool, knock yourself out. It's on the online forever. Yeah, and I do go through some of my favorite books that I've read, and I talk about the idea that I might start a book club, maybe choose a book every month that we can read together. So if that's something that interests you, please, by all means, let me know. Thank you. I look forward to telling another story tomorrow.